Welcome back. Human Rights Watch is urging U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to publicly promote free and fair elections when he visits the Democratic Republic of Congo tomorrow. Blinken's visit comes as the M23 armed group has reportedly been expanding its control in the eastern DRC, attacking villages and killing civilians. He is in South Africa. That is Blinken today. It's his first stop on a three-nation tour of Africa. Let's talk about the situation in the DRC with Mudge, Central Africa Director at Human Rights Watch. Lewis, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the program. For the benefit of our domestic audience, let's talk about who the M23 group is and what exactly their interest is in the DRC and its instability.
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me on, and good afternoon to you. M23 is a group that has been active in eastern Congo for 10 years now. This is a group that first reared its head in the Kivus in eastern DRC in 2012. And very quickly it emerged that M23 was getting direct support from Rwanda, from the Rwandan military. The group managed to take over Goma, which is a very large city in eastern Congo. It's the largest city in the east, and had a huge destabilizing effect across the Great Lakes region of Africa for a number of years. The group, after serious pressure on Rwanda and its president Paul Kagame, international pressure, the group did subsequently retreat back to containment camps in Rwanda and in Uganda. But we've seen in the last few months a resurgence in activity around M23, and now they are very much back in the eastern Congo. They are taking territory, and predictably, they're committing the same serious abuses that we documented 10 years ago, which is the extrajudicial execution of civilians, targeting civilians in combat, and we expect the list to go on and on. So this is a very sensitive time for Secretary Blinken to be going to both the Congo and to Rwanda in light of this renewed activity by this group.
Mm-hmm. Rwanda has said that it's not supporting these M23 rebels, yet there's been reporting done by experts from the United Nations recently to the opposite effect. How solid is the link to Rwanda, given that there's been this denial in the past?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've only seen the UN report. I don't know the methodology behind it. What I can say is this. Rwanda 10 years ago said the exact same thing, and it was almost farcical. It was almost a joke how direct the support was from the Rwandan military, and yet the government of Rwanda would continue to deny it. I mean, it literally 10 years ago was the point of saying the sky is green versus the sky is blue. I don't know where we are yet. I can tell you that from our own research at Human Rights Watch, we have very strong indications that there is this Rwandan military support. We've spoken with people who have seen the Rwandan military moving across the border. The question for us is how coordinated and to what level does that go in Rwanda? But I'm not putting any stock whatsoever in Rwanda's denials. Rwanda denies that it commits human rights abuses internally in Rwanda, and this is one of the most repressive governments, not only in the region, but across the continent, with regards to freedom of expression, freedom of association, and political plurality. So I would not take very seriously these denials from the government of Rwanda.
There's also internally in the DRC a lot of anger towards the government of President Felix Tshisekedi and questions about his credibility as a democratically elected president of the country. And I wonder how much those internal ructions are hindering the country's ability to respond adequately to the threat of M23 attack.
Well, I think you've hit on a very good point, and I think it's important. I know we've been speaking about the M23, but it's important not to lose context of the broader situation in the DR Congo. This is a massive country, as everyone in South Africa knows. It's the size of Western Europe, and strategically incredibly important, not only for the Great Lakes region, but for the continent on a broader scale. And to your point, you hit the nail on the head. In 2018, there were elections that were deeply flawed. And there are some very credible reports that point to not Felix Tshisekedi winning that election, but actually an opposition leader named Fayulu. And that has continued to be an issue for the Tshisekedi administration as we continue towards elections, which are slated for late 2023. So they're just around the corner. The fact is that Tshisekedi has not made good on his promises for reform. This reform includes human rights reform, with letting civil society actors operate, letting them criticize government policies, etc., but also, and just as important, with security sector reform, with demobilizing rebel groups, with making sure that there's an established vetting protocol for making sure that any rebel soldiers that do want to integrate into the national forces have not been serious abusers. These steps have just simply not been taken. So in many ways, the Tshisekedi administration, as it wraps up its first term and he goes for that second mandate, has in many ways failed to address some of these systematic issues that continue to plague the Congo.
What then can any comment by the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken during his visit this week change realistically?
Well, I think it can achieve a lot. Number one, I think Blinken's visit demonstrates to both the Congo and Rwanda that this region still matters to the United States. The United States is an absolutely privileged partner to both the DR Congo and to Rwanda, still a major player in this region. I think Secretary Blinken should absolutely remind the Congolese that the United States is keeping a firm eye on the election and the credibility of the election. We need to allow opponents to campaign freely. We need to allow for a transparent counting process after the vote has been carried out. And I think Secretary Blinken has an opportunity to reinforce that. But more importantly, I think he has an opportunity really across the region, which includes with his visit with President Kagame later in the week in Rwanda. I think he has an opportunity to really let these individuals know and these players know that the United States doesn't suffer fools and that we're absolutely watching what's happening, and that the United States is aware of the Rwandan support to the M23, and that it, just like 10 years ago, it will affect Rwanda's ability to receive bilateral support if it continues to support these proxy militias.
I'd like to read you part of what he said when he was asked about the situation in the DRC a short time ago at a briefing here in Pretoria in South Africa. Blinken said that I don't want to get ahead of my visit there, but we want to resolve the crisis. I will have a lot more to say about this in the coming days. Do you find that encouraging?
I do. Listen, this visit is coming on the heels of the CHOGM, the Heads of State Conference, which South Africans will know very well, the Commonwealth Heads of States Governments Conference in Kigali. I think Blinken is going into this region with his eyes really wide open. And you compare that to Boris Johnson's recent trip to Rwanda, in which literally, in our opinion, at Human Rights Watch, Boris Johnson just has a completely different version of the facts. So I think Secretary Blinken is going with his eyes wide open. I think this administration is demonstrating that Africa still matters. There's a lot of talk of what's happening in China and obviously the war in Ukraine. But I think this is an opportunity for the Biden administration to demonstrate that Africa still has a priority. And I think they're going to address and tackle these problems head on and be the kind of friend, frankly, that the DR Congo and Rwanda need, which is an honest one.
Thank you very much. Mudge, Central Africa Director at Human Rights Watch, thank you for speaking to us today.